Hello everyone, my name is Eric and welcome back to this little history lesson starting with the origins of Mutant all the way up to Mutant Year Zero and Mutant Year Zero The Road to Eden. Today's episode we're going to talk about Mutant the Heirs of Doom, and I actually have a few of the books. I have them right behind me here in my bookshelf. I hope you guys haven't looked too closely on my weird bookshelf here because I have some really weird books hanging around here. But back in 2002, 2002, there was a company called Järnringen, the Iron Ring. I'm just going to double check here. They purchased the license temporarily to make a reboot. Well, before that even, I think it was even further than that, maybe by 98 or 99 that they purchased the right, and they started to go into development, and they released a new mutant called Mutant Undergångens Arvtagare. Sorry for looking away. It's the Heirs of Doom, and I have the original book here, as you see. It's a very big book with a nice little, we have a duck or something here, and maybe some other weird mutated animal, and we have some kind of big freaking robot here. This is like the main rule book. This is the revised edition for it, but the solid hardcover, quite good binding to it too. And let's see now, it's about almost 165 pages long. They are utilizing a very modified version of the BRP rules once again. So keeping up with the traditions here of using it, that one. And I'm going to show you some pictures out of the book while we're talking. They started the release of the first edition in 2001. I don't own a copy of that. And they also made an adventure to that one. Syncadus was not around by this. It went under with Target Games in the 90s. There was a different gaming, an unaffiliated game, role-playing game and board game magazine. It's still around actually, called Phoenix, that they released additional material for this game in. It's nothing weird here. They are going back to the roots, so they had rebooted the, what's it called? The Gamma World inspired Pyri Samfundet. The Pyri Union has been brought back. And I wanted to show you here a little bit, it's the light is a problem here. So you have the different classes here. You have an unaltered human, you have mutants and animal mutants, a psionically gifted human, and a robot down here. If I take it farther away, I do not know. It's not that good. Those were the four classes you could use. There was you could use dice to roll a character, or you could use a point buy system. Standard stuff, and they had different classes. So I'm now looking through here. You could have been an administrator, a regular worker, a human aristocrat, a farmer, a merchant, a craftsman, a hunter, something they call a knowledgeabler, somebody with knowledge, like a wise man. It's basically a scientist, but also a person who studies the old technology from the old world, a doctor, a police, a mailman, which is basically like the Pony Express style mailman, a seaman, a soldier, a thief, a traveler or an explorer, and that's it. Those were the main classes you could play. I think there were maybe one or two additional classes in the other books. I can't remember entirely. But they were quite faithful to the original material here. It takes place, I can't remember, was it 100 and... The Pyri Samfundet is still around. I'm going to show you. It's a bit better maps here now. And I'm sorry about the light. I can't really get it much better than this. You have here, this is southern Sweden. You have Denmark out here. And down here is where I live, actually. And then you have like the Forbidden Zones, and up here it looks like the original version, more or less. With some minor changes, like down here, here's the edge of the Empire. It's still an empire led by Torulf the Executioner. Then you have the Plains of Freedom, and you have the Kingdom of the Wolf here, which is Denmark. And then you have the Northern Waste, which is like unknown territory. There's no information there. And the same over here is not that much information. And over here you have Gotland, which is its own like nation. So not that much information about other nations in the startup, but there was a lot of information about the main place. And I think it was the year 96. I think this took place in the 96th year of the founding of the Executioner line and the Pyri Samfundet. Main capital still Hindenburg. I think it actually, if I compare the maps, I think they would look basically the same. They are a little bit more on the side of talking about the problems between like humans being a minority. It's like South Africa when you think about it. The white minority ruling over the black majority. Here's like the human minority controlling the mutant population. And there's even like special groupings here in Hindenburg, and they have the Nimrod Brigade, the Nimrods, who hate mutants and constantly beat them up. Then is the Order of the Lion, which is a fundamentalist group that believes in like the supremacy of mutants, especially mutated animals, who fight against the Nimrod Brigade. There's a specific group of police officers hunting mentally gifted humans, the psionic mutants. Let's see now, what more was it? There's also more information about the other greater cities. You have Hindenburg, which is the main capital. You have in the south something called Pyrit, which is more or less New Orleans. And you have Nordholmia, which is basically the Wild West. Okay. The countryside, you have the different zones. What has happened is they are a little bit less they don't give a little bit less information about what happened at the beginning of the catastrophe. They only say it's the year 96. That's it. While in the original version, which they based this upon, it says like you have this Martian space probe bringing back the disease, and then you have the enclaves and the nuclear war. It happened here too. It did. It's just hinted at and described a little bit here and there. There's even a disease called the Great Death in this world too. So if you saw the first episode here, the second episode it would be, you have all that information served to you right there. It has a bit more about the countryside and the zones, the forbidden zones and all that stuff. Like a lot of examples and what you can find. There's a growing farming community. We're still in the like 19th century technology wise. We don't have like repeater guns yet, but we have gunpowder. They have just passed between flintlock weaponry up to cartridge based weaponry, but it's mostly one shots. All right, here we go. Other nations: Gotland, the Kingdom of the Wolf, Göteborg, which is Gothenburg, Åland and Umeå, and Sundsvall. So there are different city-states around that they might know. But what I found most interesting in here, except for like tables with equipment, stuff like that, was what kind of creatures can you find in this world? And yes, they have actually told us there's a lot of weird animals around that have been mutated, but you can still eat them. There are some kind of horses. There's I'll see if we can get this closer to the camera. You see this? That's a meat-eating armored horse mutant thingy called a Panzer. That's the army horse, basically. They have, again, that murder tree is around, which I love the fact that they have that. They have a big bug that is enormous, is super dangerous. There's a version of the land sharks, which is now kind of like an eel, more or less. They have the rabbits are back. The vegan bunnies are back. Let's see what more is there. There's a lot on the different robots here. The terror robots and stuff like that. There's still a big trade about of ancient technology. There's a lot of how should I say status in having like ancient technology. And for example, there's here about what was I saying? Yeah, there's examples here on how to purchase because you can buy like Empire-made technology weapons, but if you have high technology weapon from the old ages, you have to barter for them, and you can't buy like a crate. Here I have 500 bullets for my machine gun. No. You have to go by caliber. This is very Fallout in a way. So whenever you visit a market and you want to buy something, you have to roll like how common is this item? How common are these cartridges? Then roll another die and see how many are available and basically how much do they cost. So they are really, really expensive. Which I thought was a neat touch to this. They made a companion adventure to this. There is a meta plot that I don't want to say too much about, but they made a lot of adventure modules for this meta plot. They started out doing adventures for like conventions, role-playing game conventions, and they had ready-made characters, pre-gen characters, and they are actually mentioned in the stories, which means you see them around a lot. And I like that. That was really cool. That's a neat touch too. Gives a little bit more familiarity to the game in itself. I'm going to put this somewhere. I don't know where. I'll think over here. There we go. They also released like 4 different books based on the 4 different races you can play, like a handbook, a player's handbook for each of the races. So you had one for the humans, you had one for the mutants, the psionics, and for the robots. And as you can see here, the robot reminds you a bit about Fallout when you look at it. It's this aesthetic. I have this book, which is they were kind of small leaflet-styled books, and they were gathered together into a big companion book, which I bought to have everything at once. And then you have like advanced rules about mutants, the mutant struggle, how humanity have risen to its power. I'm going to put it like this. There's some new classes here, like, oh right, there were some classes specific for humans. I like this picture. I actually based a character on this. You have a nobleman here. I didn't play a nobleman, but and then he has his mutant helper and his giant. He's a big white hunter, and then he has his rifle here, giant freaking rifle. It's really cool. Did a lot of damage if you wanted to fight big crazy animals from the Forbidden Zones. So there's like explorer groups and clubs mentioned here for humans. For the mutants, it's mostly about their struggle. The psionics is about, again, the Iron Ring Society. And about the horrible life of a robot. And how there are robots trying to find autonomy and civil rights and all that stuff. it's cool. It's really cool. And they even had a special chapter here. I can't show you guys properly. Called Defects. So whenever you take too much damage, you might suffer a defect, or if you have too much radiation around you, you might get a defect. Stuff like that. When you get a critical damage, you get a defect. So that's the gamer's, like the main rules and the player handbook. And there's one more book that I wanted to mention at least, and this is this one, The Zoology of the Zones. And in proper like explorer style ways, there's like a character for example, for what's it called, George's Bestiary, for Trudvang, the Trudvang Chronicles. They have a similar book, and it's written by like the by George there. This is one is written by another explorer in the game, and you have like these big. It's actually a proper book that exists in the setting too. So if your characters have bought this book, they could actually open the book and read everything except for the big black part here on the side. So you like to hide this part. It's like, yeah, you find this entry about this creature, and then it's like a person describing it from their own side. And there's actually a little funny commentary at the bottom about the culinary benefits of this thing. It's like, well, this thing you can eat, this thing you can't. It's like a giant bumblebee. There's the people down there. These were my favorite creatures, actually. They're called lobobsters. Mutated lobsters. Delicacy. And in here, there's actually descriptions of the Grey Death, if I remember correctly. There's like a monster chapter. Yeah, it's written by a woman called Adelia von Hartmann, whose uncle is a famous explorer. So it starts with like monsters over here, and then it goes over into some kind of like ethnology about mutants, the mutants, and then you have like ready-made mutant groups that you can play too. If you don't feel like it, you have, again, here they are back, the Albionian Badgers. These are like only for play, that can be player characters. You have some kind of like mice that are called the Travelers. Let's see, no. You have mutated geese with psionic abilities, I think they had. Or at least some of them had psionic abilities. They are called the Goose Boys, which works better in my language. You have the Knife Clan of crazy mutants. You have a group of hares that usually get depressed and they like smoking weed. Then we have these weird things that seems to come from the Wizard of Oz, who have a lot of like high technology. But here's also a favorite of mine, the Mutated Moose. They are really freaking cool. And then it comes, it says here, Missfoster, like crazy shit basically. It's about different diseases that can happen. Yeah, here we have the fleas of the red plague. I think they call it instead of the grey plague, it's the red plague here from Mars, with fleas that eat everybody. And then they have also the different robots. Yes, all kinds. Yeah, Missfoster, it means freaks. And all bad kinds of robots that they consider a danger are called terror robots. But there are some here. Sorry, my face gets really bright because I'm close to the light. Like, whoa, look at my face. It's like I'm melting. So over here we have like, this is a dangerous robot. It's a cleaning droid. A smoke droid. I love the art here. Look at that one. This is a destroyer. It says Förintare, which would be, yeah, basically the annihilator. It's big as a freaking mountain. That can be found. Trying to find some more here. Ah, there's the guy from the rulebook on the front page. It's called The Punisher of the Skies. Sorry, again, my face is melting in the light. Punisher of the Skies. And here's the like standard soldier droid. Do you see any similarities to Star Wars? Roger, Roger. This is just an episode of me showing you shit that I think is cool. The Howler, a freaking robot dog with shit on its back, and there's other weird stuff like psionic storms and Schwartwatten. Yeah, it's like a giant freaking amoeba. And then there's even like recipes back here on how to make different kinds of foods from the zone, stuff that you find in the Forbidden Zones. So those were the 3 main books that I feel are the most important to talk about. One moment, I'm going to pick some more books here. I think this was the first one they made, which was originally, well, it was, the first one was called At the End of the Rainbow, which goes into the meta plot of the game. And the meta plot is about a hidden power who created the Empire, basically. And this one was like a freestanding game. I think At the End of the Rainbow was the first con adventure. This is like the second one. And you even have the pre-generated characters are in here if you want to play them. Otherwise they are like NPCs that will show up through the game. And this one was kind of fun because there's a carnival with a play with a thing that the carnival is evil, basically. Parts of it, at least. There are several adventures in this module, but I just remember the carnival specifically because my game group we had a lot of fun with it, and I was evil as fuck because I made them eat. They wanted to eat hot dogs, which they did, and in this module, it's like they kidnap people and they grind them up into beef and make hot dogs. And when they found out, they weren't too happy about it. Let's leave it at that. But they also made one about Gothenburg. I haven't read this one though. It's about the city-state of Gothenburg. I don't know how it ties into the game world because, as I said, I've never read this. And then we have the books that actually go into the meta plot. There's 3 of them. Look at these big freaking books. It's like worse than D&D 3.5 here. The first one of these, or Pirit, about the southern city. And this is where this meta plot starts to go crazy and you get more information about the story. It starts out with like, you have a piece here in the beginning that is darker pages, like that. It's information about the area and the people inhabiting this area, like restaurants, history behind it, important people, maps and stuff like that. And then you have the adventure. And one of the most fun things that I found here was something called The Howl, with several O's. I'm going to see if I can show you a picture. Because down here in the south, where this takes place, it's supposed to be like the Mad Max area where they have like big freaking stuff going on. And there's a big thing walking around out there called the Big Howl. And it looks like this. It's an oil platform for digging up resources. And it's like gargantuan. I love this one though. It continues. The players go north to the Wild West, Nordholmia, in the north. again, there's this part with the black with information about the area. It's like outlaw land. There's a freaking mammoth, mutated mammoth here, called the Baron. He's the robber baron, and he's a railway baron too. And it continues with the storyline, the plot line, and there's some really, really good looking. Oh, there's a big map, but I was looking here on the side. Really, really nice illustrations going on here. Ah, here he is. The feared Baron. Here he is on the side. Big freaking mutated mammoth. I love the snap of books. And then the big finale in Hindenburg, My Love. Again, a giant book. This is the largest of the expansion modules. It's almost 300 pages, and you can see here how it's actually bending outwards because it's the binding is a bit weird, which has made the book pressure out at the top here. And again, it's about, I love this guy, the fat ballerina with the beard. It's like information about Hindenburg, the city, and then you have the final end game here going on. This is a really, really nice image too. We have like a fighter, a terror robot. I love this one. I had it as a screen on my computer for a while too, because I think it's so good. And it neatly ties up the entire story. It's really well made. It's very open-ended. No railroading, which has been a problem before previously in many, many games. But that's not the end. They had a few more books that they needed to release. You see, I'm emptying the shelf down here. So they continued by releasing more information about the people around the Baltics. There's a lot of information about the different harbors and states around the Baltic areas in one book. Quite nice. And then we came to the final 2 books that they released, and this was a bit of a miss. Oh, I've forgotten to remove one of the stuff here. You have... can't remember which was the first, actually. It's about Ulvriket, which is Denmark, the land of the wolf, the kingdom of the wolf. One of them is, and I felt this was bad, they could have actually made it into one book entirely, because one is just like information about the land, the country, and how to play characters in this country. And then there was one with only adventure seeds and ready-made, pre-made adventures. And that's kind of a mistake in my opinion, because they should have been one thing together. And when they had released this, they went out of business. That's it. This was the last things they released, and basically when they sent these books out, they closed down. That's it. And that was the end of the Mutant Heirs of Doom era. I love this game. It was really, really good. We played it for many, many hours. Say that much. And but I have some criticism to this game too, because yeah, it's kind of fun and it's a bit cutesy, but it also has the realities of speciesism and trying to find the hidden gold. There's gold in them hills, and all that stuff. But there were some misses, like in Ulvriket. There was a mismatch between the campaign book and the rule book. They didn't really fit together. They presented the mutated mammoths, for example, but they were never brought up again. Things like that. I loved the meta plot that was finished in this book. But the problem was, once the meta plot was fixed, there was nothing else left. It's too bad, because it's like, the story ends here. We have no more stories for you guys. There's no other adventures available, nothing. This is it. This is the end. Well done. Of course, you could, if you had access to, I mean, if you had bought the Mutant 1 and 2 back in the 80s, you could actually incorporate the adventure modules from that game into this setting, of course. But how many people had it about 20 to 30 years later? Not many people, I can tell you that. That was a big miss. Another one was that, yeah, it was cutesy, but they also made a mistake by the fact that they used a very archaic and odd way of writing, which was funny. in a way, but I felt that they didn't take themselves. The original one didn't take itself too seriously. It had fun with the material, but these guys, they went a little bit too far. There were too many wordplays and too many references to things that didn't really make sense. It was just reference upon reference upon reference, and basically like, look how stupid these guys are because they don't know what this thing is. Mostly because whenever you were out in the zone or outside the city, you went digging for valuable stuff to sell in the city. There's an entire market of this. So there were people who found like, somebody found a t-shirt with an image of a guy, and it's like, the GM couldn't say like, yeah, it's a picture of this guy. He had to describe the person. And of course they thought the way he described it depends on the GM. But the way he described it was like, it's a regal looking person, blah, blah, blah. So they thought it was like an image of royalty that they found in something wearable, like a doublet or something from medieval times, basically. It turns out that originally it was actually an image of a guy who killed one of our prime ministers back in the 80s. But still, it became one of those, like, how much can we make fun of trying to find stuff and describing it without telling what it is? I had my group find a traffic cone, and I had to say that it's like a cone-shaped yellowish orange thing. It looks like a hat. You can put it on your head. It's a hat. Whoop! Look at that. It became a little bit too silly at times. That was a bit of a problem, and I feel they might have fixed that in Mutant Year Zero, which will be the next game I'm going to talk about. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, do leave a like and a comment. But for now, I'm going to sign off, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye!